Time now for an end-of-week look at some of the major political developments this week in Kentucky and beyond. And we've got two of our favorite commentators with us, Trey Grayson, who is screen right, or screen left, actually, and Bob Babich, who is screen right. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Good to see you, Renee.
So,
thank you.
Let's start with some news this week that we got, particularly about Brown-Forman and them making some changes. But we know that the Wall Street Journal had also reported about this kind of bourbon boom or bust phenomenon that's been going on perhaps maybe longer than we would suspect. Distillers are cutting jobs and scrapping some expansion plans. Bob Babich, I want to ask you about what's going on with the bourbon industry, and are they really concerned particularly about the threat of increased tariffs?
I'm sure the tariffs are an issue, Renee, as well as the possibility raised by the Surgeon General that alcohol should contain or post a warning. You also have the dry January push that some are adopting. All those factors figure into this. Many expansions and moves in Kentucky, though, to the positive. We represent the Bacardi company called Angel's Envy with a big development in Henry County. It will be a beautiful addition for Kentucky and terrific tourist place on the interstate connecting Cincinnati and Louisville, Northern Kentucky and Louisville, I should say. And then in downtown Louisville as well, a terrific sister building right across from the baseball stadium downtown. So those investments go on, and really bourbon is probably here for the long haul, like other spirits and wine as well.
Well, Trey Grayson, from Newport, Kentucky, Ken Lewis, who owns the New Riff Distilling, was quoted in that Wall Street Journal article as saying we're in a very serious correction right now, which is perhaps overdue. That sounds a little different, perhaps.
Yeah, the challenge with bourbon is, we know you distill it, but then you have to wait at least 5 years before you can sell it. So when you're your investor, you're the owner of the company, and you're trying to make these decisions, you're trying to convince a lender to give you money or an investor to give you capital. This is always a tricky business. And in addition to the factors that Bob cited, you've got increased competition from other products. Liquor is a cyclical. People's taste change. Bourbon boomed in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and then vodka came in and kind of killed it all. But you've got competition from these ready-to-drinks, these mixed drinks that are in grocery stores. You've got the new drugs, the Ozempic and the others that are suppressing appetite. You've got legal marijuana, which suppresses appetite and is an alternative for folks to maybe sit around and smoke a joint with their buddies instead of drinking a beer. So all this is kind of added up. And I think what Lewis was talking about is there was a lot of investment. There's still a lot of very smart investments. Bob said a couple good ones. And so Brown-Forman this week did a little correction. They are outsourcing their cooperage. They're going to sell it so they can focus on their core business. They're shedding a lot of jobs. The Brown-Formans will probably be okay because they have to get ahead of this to make sure that they don't do overbuilding anymore. And we may see some of our craft brands not make it because they're small and don't have the capital reserves. And I think that's what Ken was talking about.
So now let's play a vocabulary game for all of our viewers who love words and the symbol of them. Bullion currency. I bet you've said that 5 times this week. So in the news this week, a freshman Republican from Northern Kentucky filed a bill for consideration this session that would give citizens the power to sue the governor over taxes paid on gold and silver. And this is not a new issue. This surfaced last session. So who want to take this first? I think maybe
I'll take it.
Trey wants to take this one.
Sure. So last session, the legislature exempted from sales tax sales of gold and bullion. A lot of folks treat those as investments, and the policy argument was that you shouldn't tax an investment like that. That's not a typical good or service that we subject to our sales tax. The governor line item vetoed that bill, or that section of that bill, but the legislature said that's not a bill where he can line item. He either has to veto the whole thing or not at all. And so they said his veto was invalid. It's law. Send it to the Secretary of State. It's been codified. It's in Kentucky Revised Statutes. The administration said it was valid. The DOR put a notice on the website, Department of Revenue. Retailers, you still have to collect this. And what this bill is trying to do is essentially to make it easier for taxpayers to challenge. Because right now, if you don't want to pay that tax, you have to go through a board of tax appeals. And this sets up a procedure where you can go to court, you can file anywhere in the state. It also makes any state actor who publishes a notice saying keep collecting the tax personally liable for any damages. So there's sort of the policy aspect of this. Should this be taxed or not? But the more interesting thing is the politics. It's another example of the administration and the legislature not getting along very well. In fact, at war with each other. And there's also some constitutional questions about who has the power. What is the governor's power to veto? And what is the power to not veto? And so ultimately, this will probably end up being, decided in the Supreme Court on whether that, that line item veto authority extends to all types of revenue bills or just appropriations bills like budget bills and things like that.
Yeah. Bob, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do. Gold's had a pretty good run here lately. And for many diversified investors, older investors, they physically hold gold. You can certainly buy gold shares, but for a lot of traditional people, they hold gold in a lockbox or some safe spot in the mattress under the bed. Are we going to move so far as to tax those holdings or not? This is an interesting question for the long haul. I'm not sure it gets resolved fully this session. It will have court aspects and arguments in the future as well.
So on the cusp of the inauguration of the 47th president, we know that the incoming vice president made a trip to Kentucky this week, to Jackson County and to Breathitt County, actually. Talk to us really quickly about that, why J.D. Vance was visiting eastern Kentucky and particularly the cemetery where some of his family's buried.
For some of us who read his book when it came out several years ago, we know the Kentucky tie, and to celebrate that and the way that he did turned out to be a positive across the state. It was also a surprise. People just didn't see that coming or know about it.
Yeah. Trey?
Yeah, his mama, as he calls her, who raised him, his mother had a struggle with addiction when he was younger, so his mama, her mother, raised him for most of his youth. And so this was a tribute to go visit his mama's gravesite. And it's a reminder, I think, we in Kentucky have this connection, even though JD lives in Ohio, to the Vice President of the United States. And so that's, I think, good for the Commonwealth. And I think it's a reminder of how much Kentucky matters to him in this new administration. Also, before we go, I want to give a shout out to Casey Crosby, who was just elected today to be the co-chair of the Republican Party nationally. She's from Lexington and had the president's endorsement, and it was made official today. So Kentuckians or near Kentuckians are going to be influential in this next administration over the next 4 years.
Yeah, well, thank you for that postscript, because certainly we'd want to highlight that. And thank you both for being with us today. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.